Now, one of the ways that Pycharm can help us with some of these processes is through the Pycharm Debugger. And the Pycharm Debugger is a set of tools that allows us to keep track of how our program runs and also to find places where we have bugs in our program or errors in our code. It also helps us because it allows us to see what's going on in our code. It allows us to see the value of our variables. So a real quick side quest I want to take us on is with the Pycharm Debugger. Okay, and I'm going to go back to our email right here. And I'm going to use this code. So these are our variables up here. And this is the code. If you remember, what it does is it looks for potential email addresses and prints them out. Okay, so I'm going to use this, and I'm going to show you how to use the debugger. But I'm going to do one more thing. And that is, I'm going to create a counter because I want another variable that increments each time. And I'm going to say int counter is going to start at 0. And every time it finds a potential email address, it's just going to add 1. So that when it finds all the email addresses, it'll have a number that represents how many email addresses there are total. So I'm going to, at the end, print there are int counter potential email addresses. Okay, so if I just run this, it's going to go quick. It just spits out the email addresses and it tells me there are 5 potential email addresses. Cool, it does its thing. Now, I'm going to do a few things before I run this in the debugger. I'm going to put what are called breakpoints in. Now, a lot of you have done this by accident, and that is when you click over here and it adds a little red dot. Anybody done that by accident and wonder, what the heck am I doing over there? Well, you're adding a breakpoint. And breakpoints don't do anything. When you run the code regularly, the breakpoints are ignored. When you run your code using the debugger, though, every time it hits a breakpoint in your code, it's going to pause and wait for you to tell it to go on. So these are places where you think it would be useful to know what's going on in my code right here. So I'm going to do it there, and I'm going to do that here. And by the way, the breakpoint, as it's going down the code, it's going to pause before it runs this line. So it pauses here, and then when you have to tell it to continue, then it runs that line and goes on. So this is going to pause right before this. Okay? So I'm going to put one there, there, and there. And actually, I'm going to take this one off and put it on line 6 because I want to wait till after that is split. So now, I'm going to run this using the debugger, which is that little insect here. And we can see what's going on. Okay, so this is actually running right now. So a few things I want to show you. Number one is it pauses at that first breakpoint on line 6 before int counter is set to 0. Before. So it's run all of these up to that point. And I want to show you, you can see to the right of each line where a variable is changed or mentioned or set, it shows you the actual value of that variable. And that's really useful because here, where I say li text equals str text 1 split, it's showing me the value of that variable at this point, which is really nice to be able to pause and see what that variable is equal to. See if it's doing what you think it's doing. So now, I know you cannot read this. The reason I know that is because I'm standing right here and I can barely read it. But these, you can see here, I've got a console, which is kind of like my run output. And I've got a tab here called threads and variables. These show me the value of all of the currently declared variables, the currently available variables in my code. At this point, right now, in running the code, I have my text variables and I have my li text variable. So I'm going to continue, not restart. I'm going to press this button, which is resume. Okay. And you can see it went down 2 lines. And you can see str word right now is equal to n, which is the first item in that list. And it's paused here. It has not checked this yet. But you can see int counter is equal to 0 up there. And it also says it here. Okay, it's telling you what str word is equal to. Remember, str word is going to go through each one of those words in that array. So I'm going to hit continue again. And what just happened there is it went back to that same thing. Why did it not do int counter plus equals 1? Because, what was it? It was here, and it asked this question. If str word count this equals 1, meaning if there is 1 @ sign in that word, what was the str word? Was in. There's no @ sign there. So it just skips this, right? And it goes back up to the loop and it right back to where it is. So it's going to keep skipping that until I come to an email address. So it's got publishing is the new word right now. And I'm just going to keep going through this until we hit an email address. Okay, so there's one. Now it hasn't checked it yet, but when I check it, now it goes into that if, because that if was true. So now int counter is going to be incremented and it's going to print the word and then it'll go back up to the next word. So you can see now how this, using these breakpoints and being able to see the value. Now, if you don't have any breakpoints in your code, it's just going to zoom through it just like you ran it regular. So you don't want, if debugging, you definitely want to put some breakpoints in your code so that you can stop and see what's going on in the middle of it running. But this is really useful because it shows you. Now, if you have an error in your code, then this becomes even more useful because what you can do is put a breakpoint on the line before the code. You know, on the code message it says error on line 17. Put a breakpoint on line 16. So it'll pause right before it gets to that error, and you can see what the variables are. So you can see why it's giving you that error. It gives you more information. And that's how a debugger is valuable. So that is a real quick primer on how to use the debugger. But as you're thinking of algorithms and you're thinking about how to solve problems in code, this is really, really useful. And so that is a real quick debugger lesson. But the debugger is very, very useful.